Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Most Merciful. To all of our viewers out there, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace and blessings of God be upon all of you. Thanking you for joining us again in the rational, the intersection of faith and reason, with our guest here, Dr. Ja'far Sheikh Idris. Dr. Ja'far, once again, thank you, sir, for being with us. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. Sheikh, last time we spoke about the issue of separation of church and state, Islamic perspective on this. One of the issues that are dealt with or spoken about greatly nowadays is this concept of jihad in Islam, or as some would like to translate it as holy war. And I am not sure if war can ever be holy. I know of holy peace. I'm not sure that is an appropriate term to call war. But we would really like to get an idea of what it means, this concept of jihad.
Let me repeat what I have just said, because this has become wicked propaganda against Islam. Because many Western media gives people the image of jihad as being the order to kill everyone who is not a Muslim. And they think that Muslims who are not doing this are in fact not abiding by their religion. And it is what they call the jihadists. Jihadists are the people who are abiding by these teachings of their religion. I think we have proved in our earlier episode that this is not true, and we gave two conclusive kinds of evidence against this. Evidence from the text of the religion, no compulsion in religion and so on, and evidence from the history. It cannot be that all these Muslims throughout the ages and in different parts of the world were doing something that their religion tells them not to do. Why did Muslims tolerate Christians or Jews or so even very deviant Muslims in the community? It must be because they found justification for this in their religion. So I think the first thing is to show the falsity of this claim that jihad is not the injunction to kill non-Muslims. Okay. I think this is the most, and not only history but the present. Aren't there non-Muslims in Egypt now?
Sure.
Why shouldn't the Muslim Egyptians kill them? There are non-Muslims in the Sudan. There are non-Muslims in Iraq, in Syria, in almost every Islamic country. There are Muslims, and they are living in peace with other citizens of those countries.
Sheikh, I'm sorry, you speak about the media, and us who live in the West, especially in the United States. It seems like the way people usually find out about Islam is through headline news.
No.
Something bad happens where the perpetrators of a certain crime were Muslims, and as a result, you see Islam with this horrific crimes that took place, and there are synonyms out there.
Yes.
And I give people the example that this is how it's always been, unfortunately. At least that's how Islam is being introduced. 1979 was the issues of the hostages in the embassy in Iran. 1982, the bombings of the Marines in Beirut. 1986, the hijacking of the Aquila Laura, the Italian cruise ship, and then the World Trade Center bombing, the first one, the second one, and what have you. And people have these ugly images of Islam, and that's what they see. And it seems like the media exploits such a thing. So when you say that the media does exploit this, this is so unbelievably true that is out there.
And they don't say this about what Christians or Jews do. because you remember that
Timothy McVeigh, I think.
Timothy McVeigh and
Oklahoma bombing.
No one said this is Christianity or these are the Christians. And as some Pakistanis said, the West says about calls our bomb the Islamic bomb, but they don't call their bombs Christian bombs or Israeli bombs or Jewish bombs or so. They want to always give a bad image of Islam, and they want the Muslims to be completely passive people who would just imitate the West and do what they are told to do. Now we can come, I think, to something more positive. What is jihad, in fact? What is jihad? I think you know that the linguistic meaning, the original linguistic meaning of jihad is to exert an effort. That is the linguistic meaning. So the linguistic meaning had nothing to do with fighting, just to make an effort. I'm not saying that jihad cannot be fighting. I am just saying that linguistic speaking. In Islam, there are two kinds of jihad. The most basic jihad.
I'm sorry, in Islam, there are two kinds of exerting an effort. From now on, that's what we're saying.
Yes, and jihad, the word jihad, of exerting an effort, has taken two forms in Islam. One, and the most important, is jihad by the tongue. And this is a continuous jihad that should always be done. And in fact, the first time the word jihad was used in the Quran was used in this context.
Meaning what? What do you do with
I give you the verse. وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا. And make jihad against them with it. It refers to the Quran. So the jihad that the Prophet was ordered to make when the Muslims were still a minority and they had no power and they were still told to make jihad. And the jihad that they were told to make was jihad with the Quran. So what we have been doing now, I hope, can be and can be called jihad when you try to explain the religion, to answer questions, to refute false claims, and so on. You are making jihad, and this is jihad in its original and basic sense, and this is the jihad that is continuous, will always be there. So the Quran says, وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا. Then there is jihad as just war. Just war. And the word just here is very important. And I once said, again when I was in the United States, and many people were surprised, I said that jihad is against aggression, whether it is committed by Muslims or non-Muslims. So the idea that jihad is always against non-Muslims, jihad in the sense of fighting, is not true. You remember the verse, وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا. If two parties of Muslims, I have the quote here. If two parties among believers fall to fighting, make peace between them. This is the first thing that you do when you try to
bring a peaceful end to this.
But if one of them transgresses against the other, then fight the one that transgresses.
And clearly here, the aim of the war is to bring that aggression to an end.
Yes.
And even if it be against a fellow
definitely,
believer.
And this is jihad. No one, because a Muslim does not sacrifice his life for something that for which he will not be rewarded. So if the state tells its army to go and stop these Muslim aggressors, and of course those will be fight back and they might kill some of these soldiers, now these soldiers would be martyrs. I mean, depending on their intention, why they went to do so.
Sure.
So the jihad, the first thing to know about jihad in the form of fighting is that it is not because the other party is kafir, infidel, non-Muslim. That is not the cause. Because, as we said several times, had this been the cause, all non-Muslims would have been exterminated. And there would have been no non-Muslim among any Muslim living among any Muslim community. So the reason for the fighting is to stop injustice.
And Sheikh, and I think that's where you're making this distinction between just war and holy war.
Yeah.
You're saying that the mission itself is noble, and that is
Yes.
to bring an end to the aggression.
And this kind of war is something that is agreed upon by all people. This is how the Americans, for example, now justify their war against Afghanistan, or when they say that we are going to remove this dictator, they are saying that we are doing something that is just, because this dictator has been unfair to his people. He has caused so much damage, and so their purpose is, according to them, I mean, this is something noble that we are doing, in spite of the fact that many lives will be lost, American lives as well as Iraqi lives.
Okay.
When we do the same, they say, no, you are killing non-Muslims.
Good. Sheikh, we will have more, of course, on this topic of jihad, holy war, just war, as it is called out there. So please stay tuned, and we will be back soon.
Why righteous companions? It is Islam that given us the sense of dignity. I love all of them in a way that you cannot imagine. That Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu would say something and the Quran would come down matching what he said. والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Just compare what you did for Islam with just one of them.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you for being with us again, and welcome back to The Rational, the intersection of faith and reason, with our guest here, Dr. Ja'far Sheikh Idris. Dr. Ja'far, we were talking about the concept of jihad. You spoke about the media exploitation of this aspect, and we were explaining, linguistically speaking, what the term means and how it was used. And you were saying that you concluded that initially jihad, or ultimately jihad in Islam, is to eliminate aggression, regardless of who the aggressors are.
Yes, that jihad instead of fighting, in the form of fighting.
Yep.
Yes. Remember we said that there are two
forms of jihad.
Yeah.
And the other one was the be it in the form of debating, intellectual...
Defending the truth with...
right.
Yeah.
And in the case of war, you said that it was about the elimination of oppression, regardless of who the oppressors are and regardless of who the oppressed are. And you gave the example from Surah Al-Hujurat, and you read that to us. And now we're talking about this concept of the just war concept in Islam. So you started saying that the mission itself has to be the elimination of oppression.
Yes, and I was going to say that this oppression or transgression or can take different forms. One of the worst forms, one of them is when those in authority persecute Muslims just because they become Muslims. So it becomes the duty of other Muslims to come to the defense of their brethren and fight those who persecute them. Or they might not persecute them, but they banish them, ask them to leave their land. People who belong to that land, but now are driven from their land just because
the choice that they made to become
Muslim. And thirdly, a very general one, is when some people commit aggression against others with, say, the intention of taking their land or looting their wealth or so. Here, we as Muslims are commanded to come to the help of those who are weak, irrespective of whether they are Muslims or non-Muslims. These are some of the forms of aggression that I can think of, but there might be some other forms of aggression. But irrespective of the form of the aggression, so long as it is an aggression, then war becomes legitimate.
Or just at least.
Yes, legitimate.
Okay.
Yes,
sure.
Yes. Okay.
Sure. Okay. Sheikh, you say that I believe there is a verse that alludes to what you said in Surah An-Nisa, where Allah says, وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ.
Why don't you fight in the way of God
Allah
for
and also in the cause of those who are oppressed amongst
the weak,
men,
yes,
women and children. Sheikh, I mean, it sounds good on paper, and I don't mean to offend anyone out here, but when you see the practical implications, that when somebody goes out there and they actually feel that they are doing the work of God, you can see how such a concept can be misused. That somebody would actually go out there and they would be saying, I am killing in the name of God. Does this not open the door for such a beautiful and noble concept to be misused?
Yes, what is the alternative? You allow the injustice to go on?
No, I'm not saying that.
Yes, you try to be, as the Prophet used to do, to remind people why they are going there, why they are fighting. For the Prophet who tells them that killing in itself is not the purpose. On many occasions, he tells them that doing so and so is better than going and kill and being killed and so. So killing in itself is not something good, but it is justified because when it becomes the only way for stopping injustice. So people must be educated and reminded of the noble cause, and because a noble cause must be executed in a noble way. God will not accept you as a martyr or will not reward you if you have this kind of the intention that you alluded to, that you despise people or you are going just for worldly gains. Also, then that it might achieve the purpose of stopping the injustice, but it will not be counted as something good in the eyes of your Creator.
I like that. The fact that the cause itself is noble, it must be carried out in noble
because
ways.
They say, "Inna Allah tayyibun la yaqbalu illa tayyiban." God is good, and he doesn't accept anything that is not good. He doesn't accept it. Many people, unfortunately, make this mistake, and I find myself wondering when someone resorts to telling lies, and he thinks that this is the only way that he can serve his noble purpose. When you tell lies, when you deceive, you are doing something which is in itself bad and which God doesn't like. God is not in need of your help. He told you to do it as a test for you.
Sheikh, interestingly, you also alluded to another motive why people fight, and that is to exploit other people. In the West, it is commonly said that all wars are economics, meaning that you are after other people's resources, and that's why you do it. And with the European colonization of Africa or parts of Asia, this is what we see. But like you said earlier, it is not referred to as Christian wars, even though part of the justification that was used is that supposedly Africans were promised the triple C: Christianity, civilization, and commerce. So sometimes neither the mission is noble, nor the means by which the missions are carried out are noble, but somehow the terminology that is used supposedly brands nobility on that.
Yes, but this does not disprove the fact that a war can be waged for noble reasons. And if some people fail to do this, that doesn't mean that it cannot be done at all.
Sure.
In fact, why do they resort to this, as you said, called it nobilization of war? Because this is the only way that people can accept it, because of that moral sense that we talked about. If you tell your people that you are going to kill these people because you hate them, because they have wealth that you don't have, because you want to exploit them, many people in your own country will not be impressed by that and will not. So you have to deceive them and tell them that you are going for a noble purpose. There are weapons of mass destruction there, and these people might use these weapons of mass destruction against you. So we are in fact defending you, and not only defending the Iraqi people. We are defending you, Americans. You have to use an argument like that to carry the people with you.
Again, they also say that in a democracy, war is only popular for the first 30 days. And then people start asking very, very difficult questions. Sheikh, it seems like there is an idea of a just war in Islam. But I think you said it earlier that finding peace is always the first alternative that we ought to look for.
Yes.
And in the verse you said, فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا.
Yes.
That bring peace or rectify or mend between them. When do people resort to war?
There are many conditions for resorting to war. The first one is that you must exhaust all peaceful means. وَإِنْ جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا. If they are inclined to peace, then you accept that, you incline to peace with them. Also, you have to make sure that this war will most probably result in something better than what is now. If you think that the result, in spite of the fact that the war is legitimate, but if in the circumstances in which you are, you think that most probably the circumstances will be, the result will be worse, either for the people whom you are defending or for the Muslims, then you don't resort to that war. For example, if number of Muslims is small compared to that of the people who are aggressors, of your means are meager compared with them, then the war does not even become legitimate. You will be ordered not to wage a war, because the purpose is always to increase the good and decrease the evil.
Interesting. Sheikh, we are still talking about the concept of jihad. I'm sorry we're out of time, but we will be back to visit this topic again. So please join us the next time we are around. And until then, we say so long. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.